Katsuki shoves his way through the crowd, grumbling as he went. Be in a relationship, they said. Fall in love, they said. What they didn't say was that you had to spend evenings squirming your way through horny, drunken idiots who stank of perspiration and quite literally humped everything in sight. Katsuki wanted to sue for harassment. He pushed a tipsy woman towards her friends, glaring vehemently, and then turned his back to their apologies. As he moved, he caught sight of you. His eyebrows scrunched together in puzzlement at the strange way you stumbled and seemed to call out. Voiceless against the deafening music, warning bells rang in his head, and he pushed his way through the mindless crowd, forcing a straight path to you. He reached for you, grabbing your arm to keep you from moving further. "What's wrong?" he demanded immediately. You jerked away from him, basically blind beyond the swirling blurs. "Let go!" you shouted, fear in your unseeing eyes. Katsuki's eyes narrowed with confusion and worry. What happened to you? Well, why were you acting like this? He yanked you closer to him, against his chest, to feel his warmth, to know his presence, so that one or the other could ground you when you seemed otherwise lost to the world. "It's Katsuki," he grunts, directly into your ear. "What's going on?" Your body relaxes, but the action is so slight. It's almost insignificant to Katsuki, who was now just as on edge and growing tenser with every second he didn't know what was wrong. You grab his arm, gripping like you were afraid he'd disappear, and your stability with him. "My drink," you force out with difficulty. "Spiked." It was miraculous how 3 words could undo the years of anger management Katsuki had endured. Rage exploded in his chest, flooding his muscles like lava, and warmed his palms with thirst for whoever's blood would dare drug you. "Who the fuck did it? I'm going to fucking explode their body, one fucking limb at a time, and make them watch," Katsuki yelled, his voice thundering with his anger, loud enough for the surrounding people to take a cautious step back from the human explosion. He scanned the mass of moving bodies as though the perpetrator would have a neon sign pointing to who it was. But in the fluid horde of people, no one stood out, and behind Katsuki's crimson eyes, seeing through lenses of fury, everyone seemed a likely target. "Did you see whoever did it?" he demanded from you. However, as his eyes fell back to your face, he realized his mistake. He'd allowed his anger to speak first and cloud his judgment. His first response should not have been violence, but ensuring you were okay. At that moment, he saw that you were so clearly not. You'd answered him with a shake of your head and a faint, "Not sure." Your words would be unrecognizable had he not read your lips. You struggled to maintain any semblance of focus, and the grip on his arm seemed weaker than before. "We need to get you to the hospital," Katsuki stated suddenly, swinging his arm around you and ushering you through the club with urgency. He'd forgotten Eijirou in the sudden desperation to get you out of there, until his partner appeared next to him, wearing a mask of concern as he asked, "Did something happen?" He followed without needing an answer, trusting that whatever did happen warranted their unexplained exit. "I saw you acting strange from the platform," Eijirou continued, trying to catch your eye. You reach for him, forming his name on your lips. "E?" He grabs your hand without hesitation, but the concern on his face morphed into fearful anxiety. "What's wrong?" he implored fretfully, not liking that you weren't even looking at him. "Someone spiked their drink," Katsuki spat shortly, animosity concentrated in his breath. Eijirou's eyes widened with horror. "What? How?" "There's no time for how right now," Katsuki snapped, losing his patience with every second this unknown drug spent in your system. "We have to get them to the hospital. We don't know what it's doing to them." Eijirou nodded frantically. Yeah, you're right, of course. I'll try to clear a path. Eijirou tries to move forward, but your hold on his hand tightens as it was about to slip away. He faces you as you shake your head, the panic in your eyes breaking his heart. Don't go. Eijirou leans down to place his lips at your ear, hopeful that he could calm your fears. I'm not going far, I promise. I just want to clear a path so we can get out of here faster. I'll be right in front of you, and Katsuki will be right next to you. We're not leaving, okay, Pebble? There is hesitance, or perhaps a pause, where you processed what was said. But you nodded, and Eijirou gifted one last squeeze of your hand before letting go. He cuts a path down the people ahead, shouting for everyone to move aside and let them through. Soon they were out of Hypnotic and into the cold of the night. You shiver as the chill invades you, clinging closer to Katsuki. I parked the car over there, Eijirou said, walking hurriedly in the direction he pointed in, but stopped abruptly when he heard Katsuki yell, Hey! He whipped around in time to see your knees buckle, and Katsuki's rush movement to catch you. Your breathing had become rapid, the sharp rise and fall alarming. You blinked your eyes sluggishly, barely conscious, the strength in your limbs apparently carrying you as far as it could. The terror that emerged in Eijirou's chest mirrored the distress on Katsuki's face. He knelt down quickly, slipping his hands under your knees and around your back to bring you swiftly to his chest. Your head lolled on his shoulder, your face flushed against the skin of his neck. Hot, almost burning. The contact stirred his worry from a gale to a hurricane. Eijirou had barely laid you in the back seat of the car and climbed in before Katsuki had taken off. He fussed over you, murmuring reassurances that felt empty without the guarantee of your safety. You weren't lucid. Your eyes fluttered as though you were struggling to keep awake. A sheen of sweat began to form over your skin. You mumbled and moaned incomprehensibly until Eijirou grabbed your hand and moved closer, hopeful that his presence would calm you. Pebble, I'm right here, okay? Katsuki and I are going to get you to the hospital. Yet his words seemed soundless against the roar of whatever anguish the drug was putting you through. You gave no indication to show you heard him. We should take them to the agency. It's closer, Katsuki stated, taking a sharp turn and ignoring all speed limits. Eijirou agreed automatically, with his complete focus on you. Whatever gets them help the fastest. How are they? Katsuki asked, glancing at the rearview mirror and hating the distress in your form. Eijirou swallowed. His bottom lip wobbled with his reluctance to tell the truth. I don't know. What if the drug was something serious? What if it was too strong? What if they were trying to overdose them? Eijirou, don't fucking talk like that, Katsuki shouted, the break in his voice giving his own fear away. Eijirou gripped your hand tighter, recognizing the street and knowing they were close to the agency. We're almost there, Pebble. Don't worry. Katsuki's driving like a maniac. We'll be there soon. Well, next time you can drive, Katsuki griped, screeching to a stop as he haphazardly parked at the front of the agency. Eijirou had you out of the car in the next blink, following Katsuki's shouts for people to move out of the way. You drag your eyes open reluctantly, feeling nauseous and heavy, craving nothing more than to fall into a coma so you wouldn't have to feel the 7 types of sick you did now. But then memories begin to surface. Images of your ex, the drink, calling out for Katsuki and Eijirou amongst a blurred crowd, and then darkness. Your eyes snapped open, and you struggle upright, needing to know where you were immediately. Lethargy lingered along your limbs, but you managed the minimal movement. You soon calmed as you recognized the pristine surfaces of the agency medbay. You could never mistake the shallow dent Katsuki had exploded into the aluminium window out of irritation one day. You take a steadying breath to soothe your racing heart. You were at the agency, not sold off to some organ harvesting traffickers. You were safe at the agency. But how did you get here? The doors open and your head snaps towards it, finding Eijirou entering whilst balancing a tray of coffee cups and 2 dark circles under his eyes. Fatigue clung to him so obviously, but once his sights zeroed on you, energy sparked into his face. "You're awake!" he shouted excitedly. "Eh," you say. A voice from the muddled memories of last night spoke out. Eijirou's voice. You couldn't hear all that he said, only that his tone was comforting when you were otherwise terrified. You're engulfed in a hug before you could pry further into your memory. "It's so good to see you awake." He pulled away just as fast, with the coffee cup still in his hand. It was miraculous it didn't spill. "Are you okay? How are you feeling?" "Okay," you smile endearingly, touched by Eijirou's concern. "Did you and Katsuki bring me here?" Eijirou nodded, setting down the tray and grabbing hold of your hand. "What do you remember?" he asked, biting his lip nervously. You exhaled, sighing at your own stupidity. You think back to last night, knowing you should have been more vigilant. Running through your memories, you couldn't place just when your ex had gotten the chance to slip something into your drink, or even why he would try to. But there was no doubt as to who did it. "This guy at the bar bought me a free drink," you tell Eijirou, part of the truth. "I should have known better than to take it. I'm sorry for worrying you and Katsuki. Is Katsuki at home?" For a moment you'd almost taken Katsuki's presence for granted, assuming he would wait at your bedside for you to wake up. But he was under no obligation to do so. At least, until you gave them an answer. "I forced him to go on patrol," Eijirou answered, his eyes twinkling. "He was getting a bit antsy while you slept, so I sent him out. He'll be back soon." You nod. "Thanks for bringing me here. I hope I wasn't too much trouble?" you inquire jokingly. Eijirou's assuring smile faltered. "No trouble, just..." He stroked his thumb across the back of your hand. "I just didn't like seeing you like that. You were barely conscious, but you seemed so scared, and I couldn't help you." You bring your other hand to hold around Eijirou's, squeezing gently. "I'm sorry to have put you through that. I wasn't thinking clearly. I promise I'll be more careful from now on." The door slams open and Katsuki storms in, fuming as he scolds. "You better not! Taking drinks from strangers? Like they aren't literal villains trying to kill us daily. You're lucky it wasn't poisoned with something lethal. Did your parents not teach you not to take things from strangers, or were you a special child who wanted to be kidnapped?" "Katsuki!" Eijirou snapped. "That's enough. It's over now." "Over my ass!" Katsuki shot back. "It's not over until the motherfucker who spiked your drink is caught. Do you remember anything about that person?" Your hesitation was brief, indicated only by the slight shift of your eyes. But Katsuki zeroed in on it, like a hound on prey's trail. He straightened, pupils piercing into you. "No." You exhale and nod silently. "What?" Eijirou questioned, confused. "I'll fucking kill him," Katsuki seethed, incredulously. "Katsuki," you started to dissuade. "No! You're not going to sit there and defend him again." "I wasn't going to." "Do you know what he put in your drink?" Katsuki shouted over you, reaching for some papers you'd neglected on your bedside table and throwing them into your lap. "Iris White. You know the new, very experimental, dissociative hallucinogens sending people to the ER? You're lucky we got you to med as quickly as we did. Or who knows how it could have affected you." During Katsuki's rant, Eijirou seemed to have finally caught up. Really? He was there? Why didn't you tell me? Were you even planning on telling us? Katsuki finished, hurt merging with anger and striking you directly at your heart. Of course I was going to tell you, you defend immediately. When? Lord Katsuki, I just fucking woke up. Give me 30 seconds to recover before you start berating me and accusing me of things. You screamed, your voice shaking unwillingly. Your throat burned harshly and you found yourself blinking back tears. How had you gone from okay to struggling not to cry in a minute's time? Katsuki and Eijirou stared at you, seemingly stunned by your outburst. Sorry, you mutter. I didn't mean to shout. You swipe your hand over your eyes, taking a breath and making use of the silence to explain yourself evenly. I was going to tell you, but I was nervous. I knew you'd be mad, like you are now, and I didn't want to hear about how dumb I was not to be more careful around him. Hey, you're not dumb. He's just sneaky. You're one of the most capable heroes out there. I know he must have pulled some dirty trick to get Iris White in your drink. Eijirou moved to console, and turned just as fast on Katsuki, glaring. Apologize. You shake your head. No, E. Katsuki's right to be mad. I'm sorry I hesitated in telling you. Katsuki sobered at your brief tears. He sighed, pulling up the nearest chair and taking the seat. I'm sorry for yelling, he said sincerely, a lot calmer than he was before. And even if you hesitated, it's good that you told us. So, we can talk about how to proceed with this. He reached for the papers he'd flung and slipped one out of the pile, a form you were all too familiar with. You took the paper, contemplating that which you hadn't dared touch in all the years of being with him. Enough's enough, Katsuki said seriously, softly. He shouldn't be able to get away with how he's treated you. But we're not going to push you into something you're not ready for, Eijirou affirmed. At the end of the day, nothing else matters than your happiness. You nod and stare at the piece of paper, feeling the insignificance and flimsy sheet in your hand, and wondering how something so fragile could hold the weight of the traumatizing events meant to be written on it. It probably wouldn't do much. It could probably do a lot in the right hands. Your eyes flick up once to Eijirou and Katsuki, waiting patiently for you to make your decision. You drop your gaze to the form, considering the millions of others who stared at it across the world. Multitudes of languages, all expressing the mirror image of what you'd gone through, just in different shapes and colors. What strength had they had to proceed? Was it such that you could draw on that bravery, now in your moment? You took a final shaky breath, and nodded once again, with the power of millions behind you. Those that had won and lost battles, but were no less great. You gazed back to Katsuki and Eijirou, and simply asked for a pen. That morning, just before the sun hit its peak, you'd already filed the form, charging your ex with assault on countless fronts. It was strange, seeing every instance of pain laid out plainly on paper. You'd stare down at your own handwriting as though it was some foreign script, like someone else's story had been transcribed. As the form was pulled from your hand, a fragment of your soul was yanked out from its seclusion. It clung to you, grasping desperately at tendrils to remain inside. But as the page walked away in somebody else's hand, the vestige had no choice but to be dragged away. As it clawed to return, you watched the ghost of your past self depart, finding that your breath had suddenly become less labored. The action was next to meaningless, but momentous in the step you'd taken to find justice for yourself. And that meant the most. Even if nothing came of it, you were content with your decision. You were discharged from the medbay in the late afternoon and spent the rest of your day annoying Katsuki while he did paperwork. Eijirou reluctantly headed out for his afternoon patrol, sulking as he was forced away from them in favor of his hero duties. Katsuki, being the diligent worker he was, finished his paperwork with an hour and a half to spare. They could have waited around while you tried and prodded at Katsuki's last nerve, but instead decided to wait for Eijirou at a nearby coffee shop. Come at cocoa beans. What do you want? I'm gonna get the drinks this time. You might find yourself accidentally drugged again. Katsuki teased darkly. You shoot him a glare, pouting. That was a traumatic experience. You can't joke about that. Katsuki rolled his eyes, returning your look with a side eye. We're heroes. Our whole life is a traumatic experience. That's why we have on-call therapists. Maybe you should see one. You scowl. You first. Katsuki smirked with victory. I have. You facepalmed. Oh shit, right. You started going straight after school. Uh-huh. Your turn. Now what do you want? You rolled your eyes with defeat and gave Katsuki your order, taking up the responsibility to find them a table. You watched Katsuki in line, intimidating a new staff member with his resting bitch face, and sigh, amused and exasperated. Despite the incident yesterday, you think it might have been better if you ordered the drinks. Hi. You glance up at a man who approached you, who nervously jerked his hand in a small, awkward wave. You scrunch your eyebrows skeptically. Hello? One of the rules of this cafe that catered to Hero's Peace was that fans shouldn't bother them while they were a patron. It was a rule only enforced when necessary, as most heroes didn't mind and most cafe dwellers didn't disrupt the tranquil atmosphere. This man was a rare defector, but tickled your brain with a memory. You must have looked intimidating because the man's already anxious smile faltered. He swallowed. Sorry, you're busy. I just saw you while I was walking past and wanted to thank you. You tilted your head quizzically. What for? Oh, you don't remember me, he said, while fidgeting with his hands. You saved me from the man with the sandglass quirk the other day? The man's face clicked into a memory of that day, and you smiled with realization. Oh, I remember you. Sorry, I see a lot of faces. Please forgive me. He raised his hands to wave dismissively and said, shyly, Don't worry about it, and thank you for saving me. You don't have to thank me. It's my job. I'm happy to have helped. You reply honestly. The man opened his mouth again, but hesitated. He took a deep, shaky breath as though to steady himself, a motion familiar to you from times of strife. It's not just that, he says, as though forcing the words out. That man, he and I were together. He used to... He swallowed with difficulty. You blink at him with recognition, catching pieces of your past self in his demeanor, in certain scars scattered on visible skin, on the skittish nature of his eyes. You reach for him and he jumped at your touch, as though pulled from a different place back to the present, yanked from the memories made fresh in his mind. It's okay, you tell him, imploring him to understand that he was safe with you. I get it. He nodded, a twinkle of gratitude in his eyes. He continued as steadily as he could manage. After your speech the other day, it just really opened my eyes to what I've been putting myself through, out of fear, and I finally broke up with him. Granted, it was a lot easier to do it while he was safely behind bars. He laughed nervously. I just wanted to. I know there was a lot of backlash from what happened between you and your ex, with people questioning why you put up with it in the first place, and saying you should have left or done something to protect yourself instead of letting it happen. I just wanted to tell you that I get it. It's not easy to leave someone you love, even if they hurt you. Without you, I wouldn't have had the strength to leave him. So, thank you." He'd begun so nervously, but finished with such strength it moved your heart. Had you done that? Given him the strength to stand up for himself indirectly with your actions? You'd helped someone, meaningfully, without trying. Tears soaked your eyes as you were overcome with emotion. The man stared at you a moment, shocked from your reaction, and then became flustered. "Ah, sorry," he said hurriedly. "I didn't mean to make you cry." "Who the fuck are you, and how dare you make my firework cry?" Katsuki had appeared with their fresh coffees and a menacing expression to match. He reached for the man, making him yelp and scurry away, but you grab his hand quickly, chuckling. "It's okay. These are happy tears," you say, wiping away the strays. You turn to the man. "Thank you. It makes me happy to know that I helped one person." The man smiled bashfully. "I'm sure you helped a lot more people than just me, hero." You and Katsuki left the coffee shop soon after. The stranger's words filled you with a mirth like helium. If you weren't careful, you were sure you'd float off the ground to meet the clouds. Perhaps it was such an outrageous possibility that caused you to impulsively lace your arm through Katsuki's. For what if the clouds did not wish a sudden appearance? Katsuki glanced over while your face heated with your spontaneity. In lieu of answering his gaze, you quietly placed your head on his arm. The contact, though light and nearly nothing, grounded you with the calm of the quiet day in the city, and the knowledge that you were able to spend it with a man that cared about you. You felt a subtle pressure at your hair, and blushed with realization. Katsuki had kissed your head, such an innocent gesture that conveyed a world of hidden messages. Despite the cars that sped by and the onlookers politely ignoring them, you couldn't help but want to stay frozen in that moment. That was one person short of perfection. "Hey!" "Well, not anymore." You open your eyes to find Eijirou making his way over to them with a soft smile. But he didn't comment on the insinuation of their pose. "Ready to go home?" he asked. While your first instinct was to pull away from Katsuki, who was not yet your boyfriend, but Eijirou's, you resist, only nodding in agreement. "Ready when you are." Eijirou's eyes shone with happiness. He basically leaped into their arms to join the link. However, before he could reach, a line of red slashed between them, giving them all pause. A short, red feather floated before you. You raised an eyebrow, wondering what Hawks wanted. You open your palm and the feather falls to it. A thin note was stuck along its ratchets, reading, "See me in my office, little bird." "What does bird brain want?" Katsuki asked, scowling down at the little feather. You shrug. "To interrupt my free time?" You let go of him reluctantly. "I'm sure it'll be over quick." You hurry to Eijirou and give him a hasty hug. "Meet you by the car?" Eijirou squeezed you with the pressure only someone who missed you exerted. "Don't take too long," he pleaded. And you don't plan to. You rush up to Hawk's office, finding him swinging on his hammock. The orange and blue monstrosity swayed gently as he rocked himself at the side of the wide space, eyes closed. You remembered when he logged that in and gloated to all the pros about how his office was the most creative from them all. However, you couldn't help but notice how much that single piece of furniture contrasted with the rest of the cliché office desk and chairs. "You know you can send me a text like a normal person," you say, announcing your arrival despite knowing Hawks likely sensed you. The feather in your hand escaped and flew back to its master, meshing with its crimson family. "You would have ignored my text and pretended you only saw it tomorrow," he says, peeking through lowered eyelids and perfectly winged eyeliner. You grin and admit, "Fair enough. So what you call me all the way up here for?" Hawks hopped down from his hammock, Sauntering over to his desk, he placed his hand on one of the many documents and slid it towards you. You filled this in this morning? You glance at the document, recognizing it. Your eyebrows scrunch in confusion. Yeah, why? Hawks exhaled, his lips stretching into a pensive smile. I'm very proud of you, little bud. Honestly, was starting to doubt that you'd ever do it. You roll your eyes, returning the smile tightly. Thanks, but I doubt that's why you called me up here, you say, knowing Hawks well enough to know he wouldn't have made a fuss over this. Something else was going on. Hawks' smile fell, and he sighed. I'm putting a stop to this report. Your heart thuds at the grenade he just dropped. You blink at him flabbergasted, not comprehending what he was saying, or why he would ever do something like that. What? You demand? Hawks falls back to his chair, his shoulders slumped in a way that showed the news that followed brought him only misery. For the past few months, we've been getting these missing people's reports, about 16 in total. Most appear unrelated, but for about 4 of them, their families and friends said they went to the same bar you went to last night, Hypnotic. I asked the other families and they said they've been known to go to that bar. Your report says that you were drugged there. Called you here to offer you the undercover mission to expose the bar, if they are related to the missing people. You stare at Hawks a moment, processing his words and the implications. You find yourself in desperate need for somewhere to sit. You sink down into one of the plush chairs and ask, hesitantly, You're putting a stop to this report because you think my ex is part of this? That it wasn't just me he drugged, but other people? Hawks' eyes were sympathetic as he confessed. Not a clue, but I think it's too much of a coincidence not to be explored. We linked the venue to the people kidnapped, but the bar was searched. They don't have Iris White on the premises. So what if someone else is making the bar their playground? We have to catch them. And if it is him, who better than you? You nod, trying to get hold of your emotions as they conflicted and clashed with each other. You'd known your ex for years, but could never imagine he'd be capable of multiple kidnappings. He was capable of a lot of horrible things, but they had always been targeted at you. But to think that he may be extending that violence to others, did you think he was capable of such a thing? You think back to the years you had suffered at his hand and swallowed a thick lump in your throat. Are you sure? You ask Hawks, delving into his gaze to find out why he thought you were the right fit for this mission, considering how personally involved you would become. Hawks nodded towards the report. This gives me all the reassurance I need. I trust you to carry out your duties as a hero, to carry out this mission and catch the person responsible no matter who it is. But I also need you to ask yourself if you are ready for this. You drop your gaze and it's drawn to the report you'd filled out this morning, with every intention of letting go of the past. To close the bleak album filled with your torment and burn it to less than ashes. You'd become ready to open yourself fully and let Eijirou and Katsuki settle in your heart. But how could you now, when this accusation lodged a wedge in between the door and its lock? You had to break the wedge, to crush the last obstacle and ensure that should your ex be behind these crimes, he paid in blood. Send me the files on this case, you tell Hawks, your voice unwavering. Hawks nods, a hint of pride and respect glimmering in gold. Will do, little bud. You rise, processing the shock of the situation gradually as you turn. To think you had been afraid of floating away from happiness only moments ago like a balloon at the fair, only to be popped and sentenced to the cold, hard ground. One more thing. Hawk says, as though it was an afterthought, though you both know it wasn't. He spoke this order on its own, so that it may be held as crystal wood in its significance to be seen, or in this case, heard. I'd prefer if you keep Red Riot and Dynamite out of the mission. I trust you to keep your emotions in check, but others act erratically when they are in love. Of course, Hawks would be part of the few to know about Katsuki and Eijirou's courting. Your heart throbbed. You'd been so close, and now you would have to make them wait a little longer, just until you completed the mission and could tell them the truth. I understand, you tell Hawks as you leave. It would be the last hurdle, the final battle, and you had every intention of winning the war.